All right, let's dive right into this explainer. As business students, you know it's incredibly easy to look at today's massive tech giants and just assume their success was this straight, uninterrupted line of absolute genius. But the reality? Well, it's a lot messier. It is full of iterations, harsh pivots, and really crucial partnerships. So today we're going to trace the actual mechanics of early tech innovation through the business timeline of Steve Jobs and see how the personal computer industry didn't just magically appear, it was fiercely negotiated and commercialized into existence.
Now, I absolutely love this quote because it perfectly captures his core business philosophy. You're anticipating market needs, right? Not just reacting to them. Jobs actually used this exact line from Wayne Gretzky to sum up his whole approach at the end of a major keynote in 2007. And honestly, it's kind of the ultimate thesis for any entrepreneur. You don't build for the market that exists today, you build for the market that's gonna exist tomorrow.
So to really understand how this industry was iterated into existence, let's follow this roadmap for our case study. Counterculture to early tech, the Apple Foundation, the GUI revolution, corporate exile and evolution, the triumphant return, and finally, legacy of an innovator.
Starting right off with Section 1, Counterculture to Early Tech.
You know, it wasn't just formal engineering programs that birthed this industry. In the 1970s, it was this wild mix of diverse experiences. In 1971, you've got Jobs and Steve Wozniak selling these illegal blue box devices to get free phone calls. By 72, he drops out of Reed College, but sticks around just to audit a calligraphy class. Then in 75, he's working the night shift at Atari. I mean, none of this looks like your traditional MBA path, but it taught him about user manipulation, typography, and hardware efficiency, and those skills became the absolute bedrock of Apple's competitive advantage.
But to really get early tech, we have to talk about Steve Wozniak. He was the pure, brilliant engineer. While Jobs was at Atari, he was tasked with minimizing the circuit board for the arcade game Breakout. He immediately recruits Wozniak, who pulls off this incredible feat. He reduces the board down to a mere 45 chips in just 4 days. That was way below the industry standard of like 100 chips. Wozniak was literally the technical engine making the impossible possible.
And here is your classic business dichotomy. While Wozniak was inventing for the sheer joy of it, Jobs was the visionary marketer pushing to monetize it all. He's the one who saw the business potential in that blue box. He's also the one who notoriously told Wozniak they only got $750 for that Atari job, splitting it while secretly pocketing the actual $5,000 bonus. Ouch, right? But crucially, when Wozniak designed the Apple I, he just wanted to give the schematics away to hobbyists for free. Jobs was the guy saying, no, let's assemble these bare circuit boards and sell them for $50 a pop.
Moving right along to Section 2, the Apple Foundation. Heading into the late 70s, look at how scrappily they capitalized Apple Computer Company in 1976. To fund their first batch of computers for a local retailer named Paul Terrell, who wanted 50 fully assembled units at $500 each, they literally sold whatever they had. Wozniak sold his HP scientific calculator, and Jobs sold his Volkswagen van. But the real game changer? That happened when they brought in semi-retired Intel engineer Mike Markula. He provided a $60,000 investment and, honestly, some much-needed adult supervision.
This table right here, this shows the exact business pivot you need to understand. Going from the Apple I to the Apple II was the leap from serving a tiny niche of hobbyists to delivering a mass-produced consumer product. The Apple I was basically just a naked circuit board. But the Apple II, in '77, it was encased in plastic, had a built-in power supply, and featured expansion slots, which, by the way, Wozniak and Jobs had a massive argument over. Pivoting from a DIY kit to a finished, friendly consumer good is what truly launched the PC revolution. And to grasp the sheer scale of what they built, just wrap your head around this number. By age 25, Jobs' net worth hit an estimated $250 million. And there's no inherited wealth here. He completely shattered a glass ceiling in Silicon Valley, proving that incredibly young founders could start in a garage and scale into a global financial powerhouse in just a few years.
All right, Section 3, the GY Revolution.
We're into the 1980s now, and it's all about rapid iteration. In 1979, Jobs visits Xerox and sees the mouse-driven Alto interface. It's a total light bulb moment. He immediately gets the commercial potential. That directly inspires the Apple Lisa in 1983, which then paves the way for the iconic Macintosh in '84. It's the perfect example of spotting an uncommercialized, nerdy lab project and ruthlessly driving it to the consumer market. As business students, pay close attention to this stark contrast. The Lisa was a massive commercial failure. Why? The insane $9,999 price tag.
They only sold about 100,000 units because it was just way too expensive for the business market it was targeting. But Jobs took those brutal pricing lessons, took over the Mac project, and iterated. By offering a more affordable machine with an integral GUI and mouse, the Macintosh survived its bumpy start and went on to launch the entire desktop publishing industry.
Now, to scale this whole operation, Jobs knew he needed a seasoned corporate CEO. So in 1983, he uses this legendary pitch to recruit Pepsi's John Sculley. Do you want to sell sugared water, or do you want to change the world? I mean, wow, it's an absolute masterclass in persuasion, leveraging pure purpose over product. But as we're going to see, bringing in a traditional executive inadvertently lit the fuse for a massive corporate showdown.
Yeah, so bringing in Scully immediately exposed these completely contrasting business philosophies. Scully wanted to play it safe, rely on the proven open architecture Apple II, target schools, and avoid poking the bear, which was IBM. Jobs? He wanted to bet the entire company on the closed architecture Macintosh and go right for the throat, targeting businesses directly to beat the IBM PC. This classic breakdown in team dynamics, mixed with the Mac's slow early sales, led to a boardroom showdown where Jobs was effectively stripped of all his power.
Which leads us to Section 4, Corporate Exile and Evolution.
So Jobs resigns, but these exile years are fascinating because he really evolves his portfolio. He takes $7 million in '85 and starts Next. Funny enough, he repeats the Lisa mistake, pricing the Next workstation at $9,999, making it a total hardware flop. But its object-oriented software was so revolutionary that Tim Berners-Lee literally used it to invent the World Wide Web. At the same time, Jobs buys a computer graphics division from Lucasfilm for $10 million. That becomes Pixar, and when Toy Story hits in 1995, it brings him massive financial success, proving he wasn't just a one-trick pony.
Now for Section 5, the triumphant return. Fast forward to 1997, Apple is bleeding cash and absolutely desperate for a modern operating system, so they buy Next, which brings Jobs right back into the fold as CEO. And what follows is just an unprecedented sequence of rapid product innovation. He didn't just fix their balance sheet, he redefined consumer electronics. From the colorful iMac G3 to the iPod in 2001, the iPhone in 2007, and the iPad in 2010. This exact sequence turned a struggling computer maker into the world's most valuable publicly traded company.
And throughout this massive, explosive growth, Jobs would constantly remind his teams of this one simple phrase: real artists ship. It is such a stark reminder of the harsh business reality. Endless prototyping, total perfectionism, it's all completely useless if you don't actually execute and deliver. You have to get the product out the door and into the consumer's hands.
Look at how the early hardware lessons from the Apple II and the Mac paid off here. He was making ruthless business moves. With the iMac, they straight up abandoned the floppy disk to force people onto USB. With the iPod, the genius was using a tiny 1.8-inch hard drive to fit a massive digital ecosystem into your pocket. And the iPhone? Combining an iPod, a phone, and an internet browser using a totally new multi-touch interface. He wasn't just building cool gadgets anymore. He was systematically destroying and rebuilding entire industries.
Finally, Section 6, Legacy of an Innovator. When we look back at his legacy, his real enduring business advantage wasn't actually pure engineering. Early employees will tell you, Jobs didn't code, he didn't design the original circuits. His genius was planting himself right at the intersection of the humanities and the sciences. He held over 450 patents, and almost all of them were design patents. He focused obsessively on the intuitive look, feel, and human interaction of the product, perfectly bridging that gap between cold tech and warm, human-centered design.
So looking at this massive timeline of iteration, all the way from a garage in Los Altos to the most valuable company on Earth, I really want to leave you with this final thought. When you step out there to build your own companies, are your future products just going to serve a market that already exists? Or are you going to take the risk to completely redefine it? Thanks for exploring the real mechanics of early tech innovation with me today. Keep analyzing, keep iterating, and keep looking ahead.